Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Planning Commission for February 8th, 2024. This meeting is being conducted consistent with Assembly Bill 361 and Government Code Section 54953, subsection E. The Planning Commission meeting includes teleconference participation by all members. We are conducting the meeting using the Zoom platform, streaming live on the city website and broadcasting on Comcast Channel 15, as well as via the city YouTube channel. Public members had the opportunity to submit emails to city staff. A report of all written comments was distributed to Planning Commission members via email and posted to the city's website under the documents received after published agenda. We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Tonight, Commissioner Goodbody has asked to appear remotely, and pursuant to AB 2449, she will be appearing remotely for this meeting. I already forgot your name. I apologize. Gugurin, did I say that right? Ms. Gugurin, would you please take roll?
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Stevens.
Present.
Commissioner Franco Clausen, absent. Commissioner Patterson.
Present.
Commissioner Myers.
Present.
Commissioner Goodbody.
Present.
Chair Lowe.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And just for the record, we do have one vacancy, which will be filled during our annual recruitment.
Thank you very much. And I would like to open the floor up for public comments. At this time, this is for public comments on items that are not on the agenda. Do we have any public comments for items not on the agenda today? All right, so I'm going to close public comments for items not on the agenda.
Chair Lowe, we do have one comment online.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Frank Goulart. Mr. Goulart, go ahead.
Yes, hello. I want to comment about item number 1.
Actually, this is not the time for that. We will definitely call you in a few minutes after the staff presentation, though.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, and once again, I will close public comments unless there's any public comments about something not on the agenda, and it is closed. So we will begin with item number 1, which is a proposed 6-story mixed-use development containing 30 residential apartment units, 1,005 square foot ground floor commercial space and parking garage with automated parking stacker system on a vacant 0.17 acre parcel located at 966 B Street, APN 428-0056-057-00, requiring approval of major site plan review, a density bonus and environmental consistency checklist pursuant to CEQA. Hold on, I think. Pursuant to CEQA for application number SP-23-0006. Applicant, architect Toby Long and Joshua Jewett of Clever Homes by Toby Long Design, property owner Chris Music, Main and B Development LLC. Do we have a staff presentation on this item?
My apologies, Chair. Just for the record, Commissioner Franco Clausen is present.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And yes, Madam Chair, we do have a staff presentation. If I could please have the audio visual technician. Thank you. Okay, this is an application for a major site plan review and density bonus to allow the construction of a 6-story modular mixed-use development containing commercial space and a 28-space parking garage on the ground floor and 30 residential apartments on the upper 5 floors. The project's located on the vacant lot at the northwest corner of the intersection of B and Main Streets in downtown Hayward. The project site measures 7,668 square feet. It was previously occupied by 2 adjoining commercial buildings that were destroyed by a fire in late 2019. The property is bordered by Main and B Streets to the east and south, and public alleys leading to Municipal Parking Lot 1B to the north and west. It is zoned downtown Main Street and designated city center, retail, and office commercial in the general plan. Public parking serving this site and the other properties downtown is available along the adjacent city streets, as well as in parking lot 1B and the other city-owned parking lots in the area. This slide contains a little bit of background about the project site. It was originally developed probably about 100 years ago with the commercial buildings that previously occupied the site before they were burned down by the fire. In January 2019, the City Council approved a conditional use permit to allow a new lounge to occupy the building that was nearest to the street corner. But later that same year, a fire was accidentally started while contractors were re-roofing the 2 buildings, and both of them were burned down, unfortunately. On May 26th, 2022, the applicant submitted the current proposal to the Council Economic Development Committee to obtain some initial feedback before proceeding with a formal entitlement application. The committee expressed general support for the concept and encouraged the owners to try to occupy the commercial space with a tenant that would bring significant foot traffic to the area, such as a cafe or small restaurant. One committee member did express concern that a modular building might not be able to be of high enough architectural quality for such a prominent site in the city's downtown, but that was the only concern expressed. The applicants subsequently submitted the application that's before you tonight just over a year ago in January 2023. The project features a 6-story modular building. A modular building is a building that consists of modules or units that are pre-manufactured, brought to the site, and then assembled and erected on the site. It will contain a 1,005 square foot commercial space and a 28 space parking garage on the ground floor, along with 30 residential units on the upper 5 floors. These are rental apartment units. The apartment mix consists of 10 one-bedroom units, 10 two-bedroom units, and 10 three-bedroom units. The commercial space has been oriented toward the street corner and features abundant storefront windows that are designed to give it an inviting feel when viewed from the street. A residential lobby with an elevator, secured mailroom, and secured bicycle storage room will open onto the Main Street sidewalk. The parking garage will be accessed via the public alley off of B Street through a mechanized roll-up door, and will feature an automated vehicle stacker system that will park and retrieve residents' vehicles on demand. The property owner will be required to dedicate a 6.5-foot strip of land at the back of the site to the city in order to widen the alley to allow for 2-way vehicular traffic to and from B Street. So the alley is going to be made 6.5 feet wider, and that land will be given by the property owners to the city. A rooftop deck is provided for use by the residents, and furnished with an outdoor kitchen with 2 barbecue grills, dining tables and chairs, a couple of benches, fire pits, and a small play area, as well as rooftop appropriate landscaping. The 3 existing street trees along B Street will be removed and replaced with 3 new crepe myrtles to match the species that has been selected by the city's landscape maintenance division for future street tree plantings, while the existing large oak tree on Main Street will be preserved. The next few slides just show some of the The architect's plans, this one shows like a three-dimensional rendering for how the site would hopefully look when viewed from Kitty Corner across on the corner where the bistro is located. This is the ground level floor plan. The ice blue, the light blue color indicates the location of the commercial space. The kind of cream colored spaces in the top right corner are the residential lobby and the bike and mail rooms and the elevator and emergency stairs. And then the grayish green color that occupies about 2/3 of the ground floor at the back is the location of the parking garage. And this is a typical floor level. This is how each floor will be. The peach colored apartment units in the bottom right-hand corner are the 2-bedroom units. The pink ones in the top right corner will be the 1-bedroom units. And then the cream colored ones on the left-hand side there are the 2 3-bedroom units. And each floor will be identical going up the building. And then finally, the roof level plan. I'm not sure if you can see it here, but in the top right corner, there's like a banquet style table where you can have, a party of 8 or 10 or so. There's a couple of grills, and these 2 little black squares are barbecue grills, and there's like countertop bar style seating, some fire pits over here and benches, and then there's a little artificial turf play area, and just in case any of the residents have young children and they want to go up to the roof, get some exercise. This slide summarizes the details of the density bonus being requested as part of the application as allowed under state density bonus law. Under the current zoning and general plan designations for the property, under the current zoning and general plan land use designations, the property is permitted a maximum of 20 units. This is considered the base number of allowable units. Under density bonus law, by providing 50% of the base number of allowable units, or in this case, 3 units, as affordable to very low income households, the developer is entitled to a 50% density bonus above the base number of allowable units. If you do that math, a 50% bonus equates to 10 units, or 1/2 of the 20 units that are allowed under the base. As such, the project is permitted to have a maximum of 30 units, with 3 having to be affordable in perpetuity to very low income households, while the remaining 27 can be offered at market rental rates. State density bonus law also affords all projects utilizing a density bonus to an unlimited amount of waivers from various development standards that might preclude the developer from building the maximum number of units afforded them, as well as up to 3 incentives or concessions that would result in identifiable cost savings for the project. In this case, the applicant is proposing a total of 7 waivers from various development standards, but no incentives or concessions. This slide identifies the 7 waivers that are being requested. I'm not going to go over each and every one, but I can go over the 7, but I won't go over all this text here because I realize it's a lot. The applicant is proposing to exceed the maximum floor area ratio. They're proposing to exceed the maximum parapet height limit just by a couple of feet, incidentally, but they would still be exceeding the maximum allowed parapet height. They would exceed the maximum lot coverage limit just by a few percentage points again, but nevertheless still exceeding it. They would not meet the minimum ground floor building depth requirement of 40 feet. They would just be a little bit shy of that. They would not meet the minimum step back requirements for buildings that have 6 or more floors. Floors 6 and beyond are supposed to be stepped back 10 feet in from the property line. They're proposing a waiver from that standard. They would not meet the minimum residential parking requirement of 1 space per unit. They're close, but they're a couple spaces short, and they would not meet the minimum parking stall width requirement for a standard sized parking space in a parking garage. Now, despite those waivers that I just mentioned, staff reviewed the project for conformance to the city's general plan and downtown specific plan and determined that it actually aligns pretty well with the visions, goals, and policies of both of those documents. As a mixed-use development featuring ground floor retail space that addresses the street at a key street corner in the heart of downtown, as well as a mix of market rate and affordable rental units on the upper floors. The project is consistent with several goals and policies of both the general plan and the downtown specific plan. This slide lists some of the key goals and policies in the downtown specific plan that the project conforms to. They call for transforming the downtown into a thriving, pedestrian-friendly district that offers shopping, entertainment, and employment opportunities, along with a mix of housing opportunities for persons of all ages and socioeconomic backgrounds. Similarly, the general plan contains several policies in its land use and housing elements that encourage just this type of development in the downtown area. That is, development on vacant or dilapidated sites that increases the residential population in the area, encourages transit ridership and walking by locating higher density housing near BART stations and retail shops and everyday services like those you can find right here in the downtown, and activates the street by introducing a new commercial space that is oriented toward one of the key street corners in the downtown. The project also qualifies for the residential infill exemption under section 15195 of the CEQA guidelines, as laid out in significant detail in attachment 3 to the staff report. And because of its overall consistency with the general plan and downtown specific plan, and in recognition of the applicant's ability to request the proposed waivers afforded them under the law, staff is recommending tonight that the Planning Commission hold the public hearing and ultimately approve the project based on the findings contained in attachments 2 and 3 and subject to the conditions in attachment 4. And a couple of final notes before I conclude the presentation. Thanks for your patience. This is longer than I typically talk. The city did receive some late correspondence from 2 citizens, one who pointed out an address reference error in one of the attachments. It was just a plain old typo that was missed by everybody. And another who feels that the building is too tall for the downtown and would be inconsistent with the historic fabric of the area. Finally, staff has distributed revised conditions of approval to you all shortly before this meeting that reflect the deletion of one condition, condition number 11, regarding construction labor requirements, which the city attorney's office is currently studying to see if it is legally enforceable for projects that have a residential component to them. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you. Staff's available for questions. We have the project architect and applicant tonight with us as well.
Thank you very much for your presentation. And does the applicant want to give a presentation or is he just here to ask?
Yeah, I believe he's just here to answer any questions. And his clients, the developers are also have Zoomed in tonight. So they're not here in person, but they're on the call.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So this is the time where I would ask if any of my colleagues have any questions for staff or the developer. Commissioner.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm just curious, does the city ever require shadow studies of tall buildings be completed?
On occasion, we have, when we did the downtown specific plan, when we developed that document, and in that document, it envisioned a much taller city. Then we did some studies back then, but the shadow studies are not a CEQA issue, so we can't evaluate that against an environmental impact. And so the short answer is no, we did not require a shadow study for this project. Oftentimes, like I said, projects like this that are otherwise consistent with the zoning and what's allowed per the development guidelines, we would not require an applicant go the additional step. I would also say too that in light of SB 330, without having it be a mandated stated requirement, we can't ask the applicant to provide that and take on that extra expense.
Thank you.
Any other commissioners have questions? No? Commissioner Patterson.
Thank you, Chair. I was just wondering, even if it was not required, was there any engagement done with the community or the business owners in the area during the development of the project?
There wasn't any like formal outreach. I was contacted by a gentleman here in the audience tonight who's going to talk. He owns the bistro, which is kitty corner across the street. He has an outdoor patio, and he's expressed concern from day one about the height of the building and the potential for it to cast shadows over his business. But no, we didn't do. We treated it just as we treat any other development project. We didn't, require the applicant to do any additional outreach above and beyond what the city normally does, which is send a postcard notice out to the neighbors about letting them know about the proposal. And that's the one that the owner of the bistro responded to.
So kind of in follow up to that, is that something that the city would consider doing in the future? The reason why this seems is relevant right now is because this is the first of a new type of development in the area. So it just seems like an opportunity to maybe engage. So is that something that we would look at doing in the future? Or is that something that we would just not do because it's not required?
I think in general, we do encourage project applicants to always try to be good community partners and go out and have those conversations. If anything else, just to be aware of what their neighbors are thinking and be concerned about. But in terms of having it be a requirement, no, that would require a complete overhaul and require a change of the Muni Code, which of course that would be up to council. And I would just say that, what we do currently in terms of our messaging, the project is, we do follow the notification requirements per the state. So at any point in time, I think this project has been active for about a year. I can't speak for whether or not the applicant themselves or their team have had any specific outreach that they've done with individual property owners on the side, but in terms of like an organized, no, that we don't require that. Is that something in the future? I think it could be a possibility, but I think we need to be careful because it does, again, if we're going to create a uniform policy, then again, we would want it to be applied uniformly. And I'm not quite sure what that would look like.
Great. Just one more follow-up question. So when those notices go out, if community does respond to those, what is done at that time with their comments or feedback? Is that just passed along to the developer, or is it considered, and maybe does it change anything, or is it just more of just a notice that?
Yeah, and that's not unique. We have projects throughout the city that all follow the same process. Some projects solicit a lot of public outreach and feedback, and others don't. And so we always forward those comments to applicants for their consideration and to provide them an opportunity to be aware of the concerns of the community. So that is a pretty standard practice.
Thank you.
Chair Lowe,
Well, yes.
Commissioner Goodbody has some comments online.
Okay, Commissioner Goodbody, I'm going to call on you right after Commissioner Franco Clausen. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to echo what the commissioner just said about, I think we've mentioned it before, outreach when we have proposals that come to the community. I know we can't mandate them to walk around, but to be neighborly, like you mentioned, how can that be a more suggested thing that we do? Because it's really great for community to know, like, hey, we have this development coming, which we want. We do want that and we want Hayward to grow. But communication to the neighbors that will be impacted by it is so beneficial to your project moving forward smoothly. And so I'm just in the event of being neighborly, is it something that I don't want to overhaul things, but is really suggested in order for this to be a smoother process, a more welcome process to all developers that come? Because we've been here when people have come and not been happy what's been happening in their neighborhood, because not a lot of people look at those postcards.
Yeah, we actually, and I'll just state again, we do have we do follow, and we do have a very, in terms of our community outreach, the planning division staff does recommend applicants do outreach. We can't compel them, we can't require them. It's really beholden to the applicant for projects that could have potential impacts. I mean, obviously, I think that you raised the point of that it being even more important. But again, we rely pretty heavily on the applicant to go out and to be able to communicate and have those community meetings on their project, because it's really up to them to be able to hear. The city's not the representative of the project. It's the applicant that's proposing the project that really needs to be their cheerleader and to be able to have those be engaging and have those community conversations.
And I was not trying to leave you out. I just can't see your hand up, but Commissioner Goodbody, you're next.
Thank you, Chair Lowe. My question for staff is around approval item 94. Can you clarify? It seems to suggest that the bicycle parking should be located on the street, because right now, as proposed, it's inside an enclosed room in the lobby. Can you just clarify that one?
Yeah, that's
condition
an
of
easy one.
approval?
Yes, Commissioner. So there's two different types of bicycle parking that are required. There's long-term bike parking, quote unquote, which is basically parking that residents that would be inside of a building or a locked locker, like you sometimes see at a BART station, versus short-term parking, which are just those bike racks that you see built into a sidewalk or right outside of a grocery store or something like that. And there will be some bicycle racks that the developer installs in the sidewalk along B Street, as well as the secured bike parking room that I mentioned that would be in the lobby to the residential portion of the building.
Okay, so then item 94 then is addressing the sidewalk parking,
That's correct.
the exterior bike racks.
Yes, that's correct. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yes, that's correct.
Okay, and then I have some questions for the applicant when we get to that point.
You can go ahead and ask those questions.
Okay. My first question was on the bike security. Are there going to be individual racks inside of the room? Are they going to be just kind of people put their bikes in there on randomly, or how do you envision the bikes being secured in that space?
There'll be structured bike parking inside that room that allows the bikes to stack and to be locked individually to each of those systems.
Okay, and then my next question was about the modular units. Not having enough formal education on these kinds of units, could you just briefly review the benefits and opportunities and some of the challenges in building and servicing these kinds of units?
Sure. I think the simplest way to describe this is that it's a construction process, more so than it's a product. So this is a wood-framed structure that will be largely built and finished off-site. It gives us an opportunity to do a number of things, primarily to accelerate the construction schedule. to introduce levels of predictability that are a little hard to find in traditional construction that's often exposed to market forces and escalation. And there's some downstream benefits that we can speak to regarding environmentalism, resource limitations, impacts to the community as the construction stage is substantially less messy and noisy than it is when you build on site. So essentially the buildings are framed, they're plumbed, wired, there's mechanical systems installed, they have sheetrock on them. We install the kitchens, the bathrooms, the flooring, the doors, the windows. So the interior of these units is largely complete when they're delivered to the site. They are stacked on each other using a large crane. At the end of that process, the building is deemed a permanent California Building Code compliant structure, the same as if we were using conventional wood materials locally. So there's not a lot of uniqueness with regard to the material palette or the structural assemblies and connections or the mechanical electrical plumbing systems. It's really the unique way to assemble buildings and has some particularly unique benefits, particularly in an area like a downtown zone. We just don't have a lot of staging for the project. There's not a lot of room around this site, so it does provide some advantages in that regard.
Thank you. And then I have a follow-up question regarding just the assembly and final, build out on the site. Will you make a commitment to hire local residents for this project?
I can't speak on behalf of the developers' commitments to that end. I think we're looking to local contractors to be part of the assembly of the project. The modular facility has not been identified. They're all over the Western US, including Canada, and so as well as Canada. So there's we'll be looking to do competitive bidding to find the right manufacturer for the project. And then the local contractor, I'm sure, will be motivated to find local people to be part of the project. But we'd have to get a little further down the road to figure out who all the building partners are going to be for the project.
Thank you. My next question and final question is for staff. Is there anything in the some of in the conditions of approval or perhaps related to CEQA that address the use of modular units around liquefaction zones?
I can go ahead and respond. Specifically to the liquefaction and the whole idea. So the project is subject to CEQA, and that includes geotechnical reports, and one specifically was completed on this site, and that is required by state law. And so we would not be bringing a project forward if it did not satisfy that state law requirement. What typically happens when you have an area that could be in a potential fault zone is that we are required to hire a geotechnical report that gets peer reviewed independently. And then those findings and recommendations then also get sent to the state geologist for confirmation before anything can happen. And so there is a fairly robust check and balance system that is tied to CEQA. In terms of the specifics on modular construction, no. And the reason being is because if a building is satisfying the California Building Code, that's all it really needs to do. That specifics on the kind of construction is long, there's a lot of safeguards that have built into the California Building Code and that have recently been updated, and they get updated about every 2 to 3 years as regulations and as things change. I can tell you that there are quite a lot of earthquake safety provisions in the code, so all new construction would have to comply with seismic standards, which is much different from a lot of the existing building stock that we have downtown, which was built in the late 1800s, early 1900s, that don't have the benefit of those seismic retrofits. So this building would need to comply with that, and that would be reviewed by the building division prior to any permits being issued.
I would just add that the engineering principles are identical to site construction. So our obligation to meet all of the requirements for seismic design are unchanged despite the construction method.
Thank you for explaining that. I think it's just important for the public to understand that and to hear that, knowing that, we do, we are along a major fault. And so I think that in order for the public to better understand kind of, without having to read through the entire secret or the building codes, it's very helpful for us and for the public in general to understand these safeguards that are in place.
If I may, I just wanted to add one note that we did meet with the Economic Development Committee pretty early in the project, and the developers have joined the Chamber of Commerce pretty early in this process and have presented to the chamber as well. So they were very favorable for the project, but there was a little outreach to some of the committees in the local community.
Do you have any other questions, Commissioner Goodbody?
That's all. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Myers.
Hi, thanks, Chair. A couple questions to start off with from the staff. I actually had the opportunity to spend a few hours downtown this week talking to many of the adjacent owners. I was into the bistro, but the owner wasn't there. I don't know which of you it is. But I got a lot of perspective from the owners and a lot of the patrons about how they felt with this building. And I think the overall gist I got, the biggest issue they have currently downtown is the lack of parking. It seems to be an ongoing issue. So what I wanted to do is ask the staff, I know we own a lot of parking spaces and parking lots. Do we know how many parking lots we currently have downtown?
So we do have our transportation planner, Stephen Chang, on the call. He may be able to answer that question for you. Stephen, did you happen to hear the question from Commissioner Myers? Are you
Yes,
able
I
to-
did. Right now we have, off the top of my head, it's probably like about five of them, 5 or 6 parking lots in the downtown area.
That's the 2 parking structures and some
And then
flat
some
lots.
municipal lots, correct?
And do you know how many spaces overall that consumes? Or that
I do not have that information right now.
Okay. I'm just trying to address the parking issue currently. Also, some of the issues are tenants. Well, the issue is we bring this apartment building in, we're only adding to an already over-exhausted parking situation. I think a lot of the current tenants residing downtown are using some of the 2 and 4 hour parking spots all day and all night in front of some of these businesses. That's some of the frustrations that I'm hearing. I don't know if maybe we could address that at a later time on cracking down on that to provide some parking spots for our current businesses. Seems to be a big issue. I did hear from a few people about the height. I think there was 3. I'll be honest, I expected everybody to give me some input on the height. 3 people did, 3 or 4, I should say, between the business owners, the patrons, and other people in the city I talked to. And then the other thing that our downtown is currently having problems with is particularly on this lot is the basement dwellers. We have some homeless people that are living there and the businesses were uncomfortable with that. So overall, I got a really good perspective from a lot of the blocks in the area on those things. So referring to height to the staff real quick. Currently, what is the highest? Do you know how high the highest building is adjacent? I believe it's the music building, but I don't know what that peak is.
So there are, I think the highest buildings immediately in the immediate vicinity are 3 stories. There's a 6-story senior housing development that's undergoing a remodel, nearing completion on 2nd Street, I believe it is.
Mhm.
And then a 5-story building right across the street from that one as well. That is maybe 4 or 5 blocks east of us. But one thing I'll say that's important to to note is that the downtown specific plan, which was just adopted by the city's leaders about 5 years ago now, actually allows for buildings up to 7 stories in height downtown. This one is only 6 stories. So the city's leaders, as recently as 4 or 5 years ago, they envisioned this type of development going in the downtown. I mean, I think we all knew in the planning division, at least at City Hall, that this was going to be a polarizing project because it's really kind of the first of its kind at ground zero, so to speak. And the lot is an eyesore. I walked past it today because I'd heard the fencing had blown down in the recent storms. The fencing was back up, but I got a good view through the fence of what it looks like behind there, and it's in need of redevelopment for sure. So, but hopefully that answers your questions. It sounds like the architect might want to address.
Sorry, quick note on that. We have an active grading permit that's been approved by the city to fill in the entire site. So
Okay.
as to avoid the problems with the basement section.
Oh, okay, good. Thank you for that. And I'm glad you clarified about the 7-story. I was aware of that, and I was going to ask you to speak on that. So I'm glad you did. Thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner, if I may, the information that you wanted on the parking spaces, it's a 1,689 split between 8 lots.
I'm sorry, that was 1,689 spread over
Yeah.
8 lots?
Correct.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thanks, Stephen.
Let me see. So back to the tallest building, I know that one is 3 feet, and I was looking at it, and it peaks pretty high in the middle. So I didn't know exactly footage-wise, because I'm trying to get a perspective of how much, because we're looking at 77.5 with the parapet. So I'm trying to look at the difference there.
The architect, if you're able to open your attachment 5, the architect took several photographs of the existing buildings around the site.
Right.
And then they actually provided a streetscape, what's called a streetscape elevation. This is sheet G012 in your attachment 5
Okay.
at the bottom. Now you'll see how tall the building is compared to the adjacent buildings. But I think in the immediate downtown, I think the highest, the tallest buildings are 3 stories.
Okay.
So just
yeah.
about half the size of
Okay.
this one.
Okay, that's good. Thank
Yep.
you. And then if I can ask some questions to the developer maybe about the parking, this vehicle stacking system.
Yeah, I just wanted to let the commission know that the developer and the architect were able to get a representative from the stacking system manufacturer to be in on this call, and he's probably best qualified to answer.
Okay, wonderful.
So
Thank you.
ask away, because
Thank
this
you.
is something, this is new to all of us.
Yeah, it's new to me also.
Yeah.
I did speak to a number of people who have some experience with this, or their family members do. So I'll have some questions about that, but I'll just start really quick with a few questions. I'll try not to take too much time. First off, there's 30 units and 29 or 28 or 29 spaces. How will that be divvied out to the apartments? So does every apartment first come, first serve when they come in, and then it's full? Or does every apartment, are they anticipating every apartment will come with an assigned spot?
I think they're unbundled. So I think they're going to be assigned as people rent those spaces.
That was my other question was it
Yeah.
unbundled? So then when they sign the lease, they will either yay or nay on the
Correct.
parking. Okay. If you didn't put the stacking system in, how many vehicles would you be able to park without the stacking?
I need to consult the plans. I think we could count them up pretty quickly.
Sorry.
Oh, is it that low?
Yeah. I'll get to the plan, the sheet that shows, if they can share my screen, please. Yeah, here we go. It's hard to see, but 1, 2, 3, the 2 disabled spots, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 spaces.
Okay, thank you. And then, so I'm just trying to learn the system of this vehicle stacking to see if it's going to create chaos or have a nice flow to it. So let's say I rent an apartment and I come home from grocery shopping. what's the process? I pull into the spot, and there's one platform, and do I leave and put a code in and then it does its thing?
So Scott, I'm with TAPCO, the automated parking company. Would it be helpful if I showed you guys a quick 2-minute video of the system and how it works?
Sure, sure.
Go ahead.
Yeah, can you see my screen here?
Just give us a sec, Scott, while our clerk pulls your screen up. We see you, but we don't see your screen.
You don't see my screen.
Can we enable the speaker to share his screen from his computer, please?
Oh, might be my fault. How about now?
Yeah, we can
Hey,
see a video.
Got it. Okay, cool. So this is what we call a 3 high, 1 deep puzzle system. So it's 3 levels above ground, 1 in a pit underground. Your particular system has 3 what we call modules here. So 3 different people can be parking and retrieving their cars at the same time. Takes roughly a minute or less to get your car, depending on where you're parked in the system. There are sensors on the front and the back of the car to make sure the vehicles are parked properly. If they're not, the system will not operate. Once the gate goes down, that's for safety purposes. The platforms have hooks on them to prevent the vehicles or the platforms from falling. They also have chain tensioners that raise and lower the platforms. And if they sense a vehicle underneath it or anything below it, it will stop. We put a lot of time into training the users. So we have a training manual, a training video. We'll train the property managers. We'll train the users. We'll have all the users sign off that they feel comfortable with it and what kind of car they're going to park, because they're going to park in the same exact space every time. They get a key fob like this. They push the button from 100 feet away. It calls their car and they can come and go independently. So we find people, after usually about a week parking in it, it's just like a regular parking spot, just a little bit different. But then they're usually pretty comfortable with it. And we train the property managers as well. There's a number of different things. These are all electric. So you can install a generator if there's a power goes out. We also have a backup battery system that we sell with them as well. And then we also have a remote monitoring system. So if there's any issues with them, we can troubleshoot remotely a lot of the times, kind of just like your computer if you have to restart it if you're having an issue.
Okay, thanks. That really showed me a lot. It was very descriptive. I appreciate that. So you mentioned the generator could be there. One of my questions was, what do we do if the power goes out? Because I know one of the patrons I talked to has a sister that lives, one of the business owners has a sister that lives in Fremont, and the power goes out. He said not all the time, but it does happen. And they're stuck, and then they have to use an alternative way to get to work. So my question is, what is a generator just optional? Is that something that we could have part of this?
That's up to you. Certain cities require it, like Culver City down in Southern California requires it. Most other cities I work with do not require it. So you have a choice of either purchasing a generator that you can hook up, and these don't take a lot of power. So they're not big consumers. You can buy generators for these pretty readily. And we also have a battery backup system too. So we have a couple different options depending on which way you want to go.
Yeah, I would think an uninterrupted UPS system might be viable for something like this. I don't know if the developer is, willing to maybe add that feature. So the other thing is, when we come back from groceries, let's say from grocery shopping, and we have 3 or 4 trips to go to the house, are we able to park on that and take up that space while we go back and forth to the house to take our supplies? Or how does that work? Is it going to be holding up the system?
So you'll pull in the car, and then you'll take your groceries, and then you're going to close the gate so the other people can park and retrieve their cars, and then you'll just come out and retrieve the car again. Again, it takes about a minute to retrieve the car.
I see. Okay. And then I think this is more for the developer. How are we expecting the delivery services to, in such a crowded downtown area, how are we expecting them to bring their trucks in for loading and unloading of deliveries, such as UPS, Amazon, FedEx?
I think all the loading is going to be done off of the street.
So there'll be double parking, or will there be a designated loading spot?
I don't know if that's been worked through with Public Works. I don't think that we have a dedicated loading spot that's been called out. There's a bus stop on one side and not sure about the B Street side.
So we'll just be blocking the street, we think?
We also have access to the alleyway on both sides, so that could be used for deliveries as well.
And there's the entrance on the alley side?
Correct. The parking side is from the alleyway.
And I noticed inside, I think there's only one elevator, right?
Correct.
But there's no loading elevator for furniture, couches, big dressers. How?
No.
It's all used in that
All residential
elevator?
Yeah, correct.
Is that common, you're saying?
Pretty common. Most
it is.
small buildings like this don't have
Okay.
freight elevators.
Okay, I haven't lived in an apartment in a minute, so I don't know these things.
IKEA.
Yeah, right. I guess lastly, regarding the parking, it says electric vehicle option. So will every spot have a charger set up that will move with it, or how does that work?
Yeah, we can install a podium charger on each one of those platforms. We can make it EV ready day one, where we put in podium chargers and energize it. And or we can make the rest of the system EV capable. So we would work with the electrician during installation to run conduit along the back wall. Typically, depending on the city and Cal Green, you might require 10% or 20% chargers day one. We can install those, and then just as more are required later on, we can come back and in one day install them.
And where are we sitting right now with how many we're planning on installing? Because we're all pushing for more electric vehicles, so I would like to be prepared.
We're calling for one of the bays to be an EV bay. So
Yes, right.
one section of those would be associated with the EV. And I'm assuming if that gets more popular and there's more people that have electric cars, then you would expand that into the other bays.
And you would expand that, the owner, whoever buys the property would be
Correct.
on their dime?
The developer would expand that.
Is that something that this developer now would be willing to add a few more? And also with that uninterrupted power supply possible?
I think we can consider that, sure.
Okay, yeah, because from what I understand about these stacker systems, when that happens, it causes havoc on the individual. And a lot of these people really need their job. And I'd hate to see something like that happen. It's a cool system. It sounds really cutting edge. So I think that's exciting, but we don't want to find out the hardships, the
For
hard
sure.
way.
Yeah, I mean, parking's a struggle for all of us to figure out these days. And
Right.
I think we have parking. The state allows us to not have parking.
Yeah,
which
that
is-
that one does seem preventable though with a backup supply, power supply.
Yeah, I want to be able to evaluate the other impacts. How do you operate the door? What about the light systems? There's a
Right.
variety of other things other than the stackers themselves
Sure.
that will be impacted by power loss.
Right, exactly. Okay, I think I'm good for now.
Thank you very much. So I have a few questions, although many of them were already answered, but I do have a couple of questions. I'm scrolling through the ones that were already answered. What is staff doing to make sure, to deal with the parking issue that Commissioner Myers was talking about as it relates to with only 28 spaces? And I'm fully aware that the state doesn't allow us to deny the project based upon parking. That's not what I'm asking. I understand that. But what I'm questioning is, what is the staff doing to prepare for people who who are residents of this building who may use the municipal parking lot behind it as their parking lot?
I'm probably not the best person to answer that question. We can go back to Stephen Chang perhaps, or maybe one of our engineers in Public Works as well.
Yeah, Chair, one thing to be aware of is that there is a 4-hour parking restriction on the municipal lot between the hours of 9 and 4. So those are the peak times during downtown, and so there is restrictions during that time.
And is it enforced?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Okay. Let's see. So we talked a little bit earlier, I think you talked a little bit earlier, and you said about the 7 waivers. And you said that you weren't going to go through the 7 waivers, but my understanding is that the developer is allowed unlimited waivers for this project. And the Planning Commission, I think, doesn't have the power to reject any of the 7 waivers because they're allowed unlimited waivers. Is that correct?
Generally, yes. There are some criteria under which the decision-making body can reject a waiver request, but none of them apply here. I'll read them to you. They're in the staff report. They're deep in that staff report. I know that's a big kind of a beast of a staff report.
Oh, you don't have to. I mean, I think I get now. I just want to make sure I understood that.
Yeah.
But then my question then is, as I'm reading it and I'm reading, 7 seems like a lot. I'm sure it isn't, but it seems like a lot. So my question, at least so we just understand, I assume that those standards were put into place for reasons. So even though at one point you said, well, it's 78, or they're asked for 78, an extension of the width from 75, it's only a few inches, but I assume that these are in place for some sort of reason. My question is, how do these waivers that are being requested affect either the quality of the construction itself or safety, or can you expand on that?
So I'll take that, Chair. So under the density bonus law, there are very specific circumstances under which waivers can be rejected. One of them is if they would create a public health and safety threat, and the other would be if it was contrary to state or federal law. So if a waiver was going to violate the building code, that's something that the city wouldn't be required to grant. And the building code has objective public health and safety standards. So it would be, double bases. So, I'll defer to Mr. Kowalski, but I would imagine that these waivers don't have an impact on health and safety issues.
And or quality of construction, I would assume as well.
Correct.
Okay, just double checking that.
Just a quick, and thank you, Mr. Vigilia. Those standards that are being waived, they're meant to, they're principles of good design, of good urban design, but this is a very small lot. They're trying to, squeeze it. They're trying to get some parking in for the residents, some commercial like the city wants, and then the apartment units above, and a density bonus because they're providing affordable. So there's not really the room. They need to max out the size of the building on that little tiny lot, and that's why they're not able to meet a lot of these standards. If we had a nice big lot, a lot of room to work with, they'd probably be able to meet most of them. But such as it is.
Thank you very much. I appreciate those answers, the explanations that you've given. I have a question for the applicant. Why are the 2 bedrooms larger than the 3 bedrooms?
I think it's just a function of how the layouts are working.
Okay. And will there be offices in the 3 bedrooms as well, or just the 2 bedrooms?
I'm not sure we're fully settled on all of the finer points of the interior design, so I think we'd account for some offices too.
Okay. And who gets there's only a few balconies. Who gets the balconies?
I have to refer to the plans, but there's a few units. We've used the balconies to try to create some articulation within the facades to give a little breaking it up and to provide a little bit of outdoor space. But there's a lot of, lot line to lot line wall construction. So really it's the roof deck that's providing most of the outdoor spaces for the units.
And still relating to the balconies though, would it only be people who have 3 bedrooms or people who have 2 bedrooms?
Toby, I actually found it. And it's a great question. How do 2 bedrooms units be larger than the 3-bedroom units? The staff report could have been a little more descriptive, I'll say, since I was the author of it. Some of the 2-bedroom units do have an office, and the office is almost the size of a bedroom, but some of them don't. So not all of the 2-bedroom units are bigger than the 3-bedroom units. It's the ones that have the office. And if you look at the screen here that I'm showing, the Peach unit, where's my mouse? Right here, is a pretty good size unit. And that's the one that incidentally that also has the balcony as well. But this unit right next door to it is a standard 2-bedroom minus the office. And it's clearly smaller than those 3-bedroom units. So I apologize for that.
Okay, thank you.
I think the basis for the office is that it's interior, it doesn't have any windows, so it can't really be a sleeping area. So we end up trying to make that space useful for the unit. So the idea was that was an office or kind of a laundry area.
Okay, okay. And then, yeah, I think what I was really getting at too, and those answers are great because I really want to know, but it sounds like, I guess my question is, so what I'm looking at floor plan for 2 through 6, it's going to be the same on every floor. So the 2-bedroom with the office is always the one that's going to get the balcony. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. And so the one designated for the 2-bedroom that's designated for very low income, is that a 2-bedroom with an office or without an office?
I believe there's one of each of the units which has been designated as the very low income deed restricted unit. So there's one 1-bedroom, one 2-bedroom, and then one 3-bedroom.
Yes. What I'm asking is one of the two, is the 2-bedroom one with an office or one without an office?
I can
See if you flip back to
probably
the-
find that.
We have that
information.
mapped out.
Yeah, it's on one of the sheets in the plans. Okay, here we go.
Oh, there it is. So it is,
Oh, it looks like it's the one with the balcony.
it is the one with the balcony.
Okay.
The crosshatched one here. Do you see it?
Yes.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you so much. I appreciate that. And thank you so much as well. That's all the questions I have. Do any of my fellow commissioners? Okay, Commissioner Franco Clausen.
Thank you so much. These were really great questions. And I felt like we all had very similar questions. So I did just want to go back to just something you said earlier, because I just want to be mindful about who's our target audience to move into this place. And, are they families? Is it affordable? Because we have Lincoln Landing, where I think we have a similar issue about getting some of the businesses full. I mean, Hayward downtown struggles in our area to get a lot of businesses for so many other reasons, which I think is great. But the one thing that I was curious about is when you talked about the elevators, and is it ADA, compliance, meaning like people with disabilities? What if they wanted to rent one of these places? How do we accommodate for that? If it's just a standard elevator, how would they get access to and from their space? And the parking situation that we spoke about earlier is like, yeah, what if, parents, they move in as singles, but then they have kids and they've got a car seat, they've got food, and they've got to wait each time for their cars to come back and forth down. And I think there was a question, and I felt like it wasn't fully answered on that, meaning people don't want to go back and forth. We want to be able to unload and get our stuff out of the car, especially if we just got off work, we picked our kids up from daycare. How do we see that fitting into this development in Hayward, which is a family community?
Sure. So I think the first thing I would say with regard to family is that we have some 3-bedroom units. These are rare. We do a lot of projects that are just all studios. I mean, this is affordable living for the current moment. So I think we have units that are conducive to family living, which is, I think, an asset and a little unique. It's got diversity in this building, and I think we're going to see a diversity of tenant types as well. So starting at the ground level, there are 2 accessible parking spaces that do not require any maneuvering of the machines. And so for anyone that's disabled using this building, there are requirements in the building code for us to address accessibility and as the code reads more directly, what we call adaptability. So effectively, every unit in this building has to be able to be easily adapted to meet accessible living standards. We don't have to build those in exactly, but the requirements under the building code limit major modification, which they deem to be moving walls, structural modifications, having to do things that are other than simple installation of accessible bathroom fixtures, countertops, kitchens, et cetera. These are all required in the unit. So the elevator will be fully accessible. We don't have an option around this. It's not just a small, little elevator that you think about in an old building in New York City or something along those lines. This is a fully, a large elevator, has enough space to carry a gurney. So anybody who is in need of medical services needs to be able to come down this elevator in a gurney. The code has addressed a lot of the issues that pertain to adaptability and accessibility, and that's required in all of these units. So you do end up with these sort of larger bathroom spaces. We end up with big clearances around doors. Hallways are certain widths. These kinds of things, I think, all speak to that. I think there's an inconvenience of having to park a car in a small building. This is going to be part of the lifestyle of this property. I think it's going to fall to the property managers to figure out how to help coordinate some of these issues. There's alley access on both sides. This is how we're delivering or removing trash from the building, probably how we're going to receive deliveries for the structure. To some extent, they may play towards having to unload kids and such. I assume to some extent the corridor space that just you're pulling into is going to service a little bit of this need. I think that there's a adjacent parking, garage, a parking lot, which we know aren't going to be permanent parking spaces for these tenants, but I think to some extent people probably may use them if it looks like you're running in and out. Do you want to put your car inside of the machine? I'm not sure. I suspect that people are going to find ways of accommodating the lifestyle that they're going to be bringing into the project. I think there's a way to get this to work. And as Scott spoke to, you basically don't lose your car until you shut the gate. And so if you're going to have to unload groceries out of pulling into your parking space, you'll have control over whether or not your car is going to, disappear into the pit.
Thank you. Just the second part of that is when I'm looking at the design, is this a final for the parking? Like, is there a possibility that there could be one spot for loading that's near the elevator? Just for that inconvenience so they don't stop off other people? Because I think what the commissioner mentioned, like the traffic jam, that it could start, say that I pull my Prius in there, but I'm like, I need to unload a couple of times. It could stop the process of other people parking. Is there a possibility for there to have a loading spot that's temporary that as you mentioned, it feels like a lot of the responsibilities after you develop it and do all the things you do, it goes on the property manager, something that they can maintain to say this is specifically for loading, not just for people that I see the 2 designated spots for people with disability, and I can appreciate that. But other people have disabilities that are unseen and unknown about, and who may need to have access without inconveniencing the other, people that live in the building. Could that be something we consider?
I think it's a possibility. The challenge is that each one of those spaces is actually 3 spaces. So giving up 1 space for a temporary access actually removes 3 spaces from the structure. So we exacerbate the problem of not enough parking. So I think we're trying to get this as close to 1 parking space per unit as possible. So every time we move to a surface unit, we're going to actually reduce the amount of parking that we have overall for the entire building. So I think we're open to that discussion. I think it would require a little bit more review to determine where that should be located and how that should be accounted for.
Okay, and this is the last one, I promise. If that's not something that we can do, I think it was mentioned, I can't remember who it was, it said, is there a loading on the front of the building for packages? Could that, on Main Street, I see this like it kind of, the sidewalk goes in a little bit. Is there a possibility to have a loading zone there? Or you said you haven't worked that out with, I think, Public Works yet, but is that something that could be considered in the project?
Yeah, I think we're open to whatever we need to do. I think
No.
that's going to fall to city standards
Yeah,
more so
I'm
than
just-
we may have an ability.
I'm just trying to come up with
loading,
solutions
so.
here collectively.
Yeah, and thank you, Commissioner. I think, and Stephen certainly can weigh in here if I misstate anything, but as downtown continues to densify, as we start to see redevelopment, having a more strategic plan for how we're accommodating that, because currently we have businesses that don't have a parking spot at all, and their commercial loading and unloading is on the street. And so maybe having a coordinated area. I've seen a lot of cities take the approach of, that it's a specific loading, unloading area between certain hours of the day that are not the peak hours when traffic is going. But I mean, I think I hear what you're saying. And for this specific project, I don't know that they've actually designated, but I do think that that is a really good goal to continue to coordinate as with other projects and other streets and just kind of how are we going to program our streets? How are we going to program the loading areas? Because it's not unique to Hayward. I would say a lot of downtowns also struggle with this. And I would imagine a lot of the business owners down here right now have very similar challenges of getting their product loaded to them without blocking the street.
I mean, yeah, as someone who, patronizes the local place, sometimes it's hard just to find parking just to go have dinner. So I can see how having it in a complete 30 units that may double like maybe 100 people that live in the whole building, like the impact that would have on traffic. So I'm glad that you're thinking about how we standardize that when we have new developments, especially coming in downtown. So thank you so much.
Yeah, I mean, I would note that there's, this property is bounded by two alleyways. One, we are widening in order to account for two-way traffic, which was quite a deliberation with the city to try to figure out how to get parking at the back of the building, which was not originally the thought that they were going to ask us to do. It didn't make sense, in my opinion, to affect either the facade of Main Street or B Street with a parking entrance. We have a lot of sidewalk furniture. We've got bus stops. There's a lot of stuff going on this corner. It didn't make sense to try to give up a lobby area or a cafe space or a retail space to have a garage entrance. So I think pulling it off the back makes complete sense. And we've managed to work through this with the city to widen that alleyway to account for two-way traffic, essentially at the point of the garage, where the garage is coming in and out. We can have two cars sort of passing each other. To be quite honest, we've never really talked about the other alleyway, which is a dedicated easement space that easily, in my opinion, could be purposed for some of this short-term loading, unloading, taking kids upstairs and such. I'm not sure what that alleyway is actually used for, to be quite frank. It seems to be most of the traffic is coming through the primary alley to the back parking lot. So that may be something that we'd be willing to consider as well, to try to do some striping or some signage or something that might allow for a temporary condition where someone could pull past the door of the garage and use the entrance to the alleyway that goes back to Main Street from that rear alley as some potential function to help alleviate some of these concerns.
Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, Commissioner Patterson was first, and then I'll go right to you.
Thank you, Chair. So I actually was going to hold a little bit of this for my comments, but you brought up the waivers, and I do have questions here. So it says that the waivers are directly related to the size and number of units, right, that are being proposed. And I just want to be clear, is 15% of the units being for very low income, that's the minimum, right? Could it be more? Is that just the number that you have to do to get to the density?
Okay. Christina, I'm not sure. Are you comfortable answering that question? Christina Morales is the housing manager.
Yes. So there's a formula under the state density bonus law that based on the desired achieved density, what the requirement would be to provide affordable housing. So what they proposed has not only exceeded what is required under our affordable housing ordinance, and they're also providing a deeper subsidy than is what is required. But it aligns with the amount of density that they have proposed to increase on their project in exchange for having these 3 very low income units. And I think I want to add, maybe for clarification with the waivers, is that the idea is that because they want to, in order to achieve the density that they're proposing, that there may be some other constraints that are in our standards. And so the waivers are really intended to make the project at this density that's allowed under state law achievable.
So anything above the original 20 proposed units, we're increasing density, but is there any regulation there on how many more units needed to be added? Did it have to be 30? Could it have been 25?
So the percent of units, so if they're for the 50% increase, they are allowed, they're required to provide the 3 affordable units. So depending on the percent increase in density would determine how many affordable units they'd have to provide. If they were providing more, let's say low income units, they would, because it doesn't have that deep subsidy, they'd have to provide more units. But because they've done this deep targeting, there's fewer units, but hitting really an affordability level that's needed in the community in order to provide unit inventory that is kind of aligned with our displacement study, where we're seeing that there's most need for inventory. Additionally, with the 3-bedroom units are really aligned with the housing element, where we are seeing that there are very few rental properties that have these larger units for family. So in addition to not only getting the affordable units, the project is kind of meeting a need for the community in terms of providing those larger units for families.
Great. So thank you. I do understand about the 3 units, and it's for very low income housing and the appreciation for making it at that level. My question is really about the other 27. And is that a set number? It was originally 20 overall,
Yeah.
right? It went up to 30 with the 3.
So there's a
It's-
table, I don't have it at my fingertips, but if by providing 15% very low income, you can provide 10% at low income or 15%, but providing 50% very low income entitles the developer to a 50% density bonus. I think that's the minimum amount to get a whopping 50% density bonus.
So I guess my question is, in such a small space, is that the best decision? I get we need more housing in Hayward, but there are a lot of waivers here to me too. I know, as Chair Lowe said, maybe that's a low number and we just aren't aware of it. It feels a little high though, when there's only 16 things on that list and 7 of them are not, being met because of waivers. So that's what I'm trying to figure out. Like, we're in this small space, or is this above and beyond? Was it what it has to be? There was issues potentially with the height. So I'm trying to understand.
Yeah, it's a tough one for
where we
staff to
landed.
answer. I don't know if Planning Director LaKirko wants to tackle it, but.
Let me just kind of chime in here, just to clarify, because this is allowed by state law, they're entitled to it. If they want to go fewer, they certainly could do that, but that's not the basis for the commission to require them to go to 27 units or to 24 units. They are entitled per state law to maximize the number of density bonus that they get, and they're also entitled to unlimited waivers. So in this particular case, they are requesting a certain number of waivers to make the project feasible and to be able to achieve the number of units that they want. It's quite possible that if they were doing 27 units, it's quite possible that the project is no longer feasible. So again, state density bonus law, it really works in their favor. And it's not just this project. We've had several projects, I would say, in recent memory that have taken advantage of this. And I would expect that we're going to see quite a few more. And it's due to the housing crisis. And the state has basically has relegated these options for developers to be able to maximize the land area and to be able to maximize the number of units. So yeah, it's something that, do they have to request? No, they don't, because they're entitled to it per state law.
So thank you. I appreciate that answer, and just again, understanding what our role is and what we are able to do as a commission, and also just as the city. I feel like we're beyond that today for there to maybe be changes made, but I would hope, and I'll think about it, how maybe frame it for the future, that people can be encouraged. Just because you're entitled to something, if it's not necessarily right, like how to have that conversation and to like scale it back a little bit. And so I know it's a tough situation because we need the housing and there's technically nothing we can all do, but I also want what's best for the city.
Commissioner Stevens.
So I heard somebody mention that the commercial space is required by the city. I'm assuming that's in the specific plan and in the general plan that the commercial space is required.
Yeah, well, I don't know if it's actually required, Commissioner, but it's definitely something that the city wants to see. And I think it might actually be. I don't think you can have residential uses on the ground floor in the downtown area. So I think the answer is yes. But I know that the city, all the general plan and the downtown specific plan really want to see commercial on the ground, in new developments, commercial on the ground floor, activate the street.
Got it.
Even more, yeah.
So from the developer's perspective, does it make economic sense to have a commercial product on the ground floor?
I'm not sure that we know what the alternative would be. If we can't use the ground floor for residential uses, obviously parking has some value, but I think the vibrancy of the streetscape benefits from having commercial spaces.
Yeah, I'm just curious, like if the city would allow residential on the ground floor, would that be a preferred alternative to a commercial space?
I'm not sure I know the answer to that question. I'll have to consult with my clients.
And the developer and their economic analysis hasn't or sort of studied what the potential benefit of a commercial space is. So there's no gut feeling either.
Again, I'm not sure I know what the alternative would be. I could certainly see purposing that space for amenities for the tenants, that would give more things for people to do. But I think having a very tight pro forma, we have a lot of infrastructure work that's associated with this project. It will benefit from having as much revenue generated from as many square feet in this building as possible.
Thank you.
I also recalled while you guys were talking that the Council Economic Development Committee did ask to see a commercial, like a cafe or a restaurant, go into that corner space. That they thought that was a very important component of the project when we presented it to them a year and a half ago. So, yep.
Commissioner Myers.
Thank you, Chair. For you, so we're kind of the voice of our community. And one of the things that is important to our downtown community is the impact that a construction site, should it pass, such as this, would have on parking and the disruption to their business. What do you foresee if this does pass for disruption in a number of parking spots and disruption in front of these businesses? And how do we mitigate those?
Well, again, Commissioner, I think one of the main mitigations is that we're going to be building largely off-site. So we're going to compress our construction schedule rather dramatically, in some instances up to 30 to even 50% of the construction time. So the impacts to the community will be minimized through a shorter duration. I think we could also make a case that the quote unquote nuisance of construction is deeply minimized in terms of noise, air pollution, parking vehicles, subcontractors, picking up spaces. All of this is going to be dramatically different because the building's largely constructed away from the location of the project. There's a construction plan which will be produced at the time of building permits. The staging of the project will probably require anywhere from about a week and a half to potentially 3 weeks to set the entire building. So we're going to build this structure in 3 weeks after our podium deck is finished. I think that alone probably has a pretty substantial reduction to the impacts of the community. And of course, the contractors involved in the project will be managing that process as well as the construction zone. I'm sure there are some other issues that will have to be resolved. The bus stop's going to be impacted. There's going to be other things that will have to be temporarily adjusted in order to account for the construction of the project.
I have seen this type of build, and it's quite impressive, the timeframes that happen. I know that there will be probably, 90-ton crane or something like that. Will you be setting the crane for setting the modules onto Main Street? Is that the expectation?
I'm not sure yet. I think that we'll be working that through with the building contractors and probably in some conversation with the city officials. We will have some limitation. I think largely this will be off of B Street, which is how the primary orientation of the modules is created. It's a big crane. It's going to probably be 250 ton to 350 ton crane. I suspect we'll only be using one crane, although I'm not entirely sure about that. Sometimes it benefits to do more than once. Essentially how this process goes is that as the modules are delivered, right now, it's about 40 modules. We're right on the edge of what a lot of factories can produce. They're about 70 feet long. If there's a need, we would break those down. We would potentially double the number of modules. Of course, that has an impact to transportation costs, which all plays to the pro forma of the project. But the way this generally goes is there's an offsite staging area, which is going to be identified for the project where the modules will be delivered from the factory. And then there's usually 2 trucks that are shuttling back and forth from the staging area, delivering one module at a time. It's not going to be a long mile of modules waiting to be delivered. It'll be sort of one module at a time. As one module is picked by the crane, that truck leaves, the next truck will be on its way in. They stage it. It takes about an hour per module to get each module set.
Okay, great. Yeah, I've seen that. And then last question to you, I hope. There's a set spot on the rooftop for solar. That will just be established ready for solar, or will it have any solar installed on it?
We have an obligation under the California Building Code to build solar into the project. So we will be working to build a solar array that generates power for the project.
Okay, and I thought that it only said a space for it, so I wanted clarification on that. And do you know, how does solar work on an apartment building? Does it only offset the core electrical power usage, or does each independent individual apartment get a portion of the solar offset?
I'm not sure we've determined all of the metering systems quite yet. So generally speaking, it will work to offset the base building functions that are associated with all of the parts of the project. It will definitely work to create power for all of the common spaces. I think to some extent, the parking structure is going to benefit from solar. I think we're going to have some potential that we get a benefit that could be associated with each of the units, but the metering system I don't think has been fully worked out yet. So
okay, yeah, I was curious about that. And I don't think you have to do a battery backup system, but do you know if that's incorporated already into the solar array?
I'm not sure we know yet. I mean, I don't think it's going to be required, but we'll have to run our energy calcs in order to figure out what's going to be required to meet the Title 24 requirements of the project.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, thank you for all your questions. Very nice. I do have one more-
Commissioner Meyer, just wanted to also just kind of add to that, that is because this project is abutting several alleyways and public roadways, that they would be required to get an encroachment permit, and that would require traffic control plans and working collaboratively with our Public Works Department to minimize any sort of disruption as much as possible. So this isn't just to get, here's a permit and you're ready, you're off to the races. There is going to continue to be a lot of collaboration with the city staff to ensure that emergency services are maintained, that people can still get to where they need to go. And if there needs to be any lane closures or anything like that, that will be coordinated ahead of time before any work happens on the site.
There's significant coordination with the fire department, as you can imagine.
Okay, yes, yes. And I did read that. And that's good to know. That's great. And I like the reduced timeframes. That's helpful for us to communicate to the public, those kind of timeframes. And then deed restrictions, I see that those 3 are deed restricted. On this type of an application, does that just merely mean that there will always be 3 units that need to be of this low income? Is that what the deed restriction specifies?
Yeah, I'm gonna let Housing Manager Morales answer that. I believe the answer is yes, but Christina, if you could speak to that, please.
Correct. So 2 of the units will be restricted very low income in perpetuity. And then one of them for the density bonus has a restriction of 55 years.
Oh, okay, great. And lastly, and I will be done, I believe, the mural. I read in the notes that it will be in conjunction with the city for, I'm assuming for approval of the type of mural, and will the developer be responsible for paying the fees to install that, or will that be on the city?
Yes, and yes. The city will review any proposed art installation on the exterior of that building. Obviously, we care what is put on such a,
for
at
now.
such a prominently visible location. And then, yes, it would be at the developer's expense as well.
Excellent. Very good. Okay, that concludes my questions. Thank you.
I have a comment.
Go ahead, Commissioner Goodbody.
Thank you. So I was just gonna piggyback or echo Commissioner Franco Clausen's comments about the loading and unloading. I just moved my daughter out of a 5-story apartment downtown Berkeley that was surrounded by businesses, and there's an alleyway that each of the deliveries were utilized. So the deliveries were made, the Amazon trucks and whatever would use the alleyway, but then there was also a resident loading, offloading zone in front of the building so that people, unloading and offloading their kids and groceries and whatnot would just enter the front of the building and go directly to the elevator. So it's something that's been done. It's been currently being done in other cities. And so I just wanted to offer that.
Thank you. All right, so let's move to public comment on this item. I know we have one person here who wants to make public comment, Vic Crouch. Go ahead. You'll have 3 minutes.
I've met or seen a lot of you. I don't really know where to start, you guys. We've had a business at the Bistro now for 30 years. We got the heart blood of this city. The downtown, the heart of downtown is Humpy and Main. You know where the sun sets? Behind that proposed building. I have nothing wrong with these developers. I see what they're doing. I understand there's a downtown specific plan. I understand there's this density bonus thing going on. It's pretty straight seeing what they're doing. They're just trying to shove something in here to make as much money as we can. And just like what Annika says, just because you could do it doesn't mean you have to do it. This was never approached to any of us downtown about what a big behemoth they're going to put in the heart of our downtown. Make it a 3-story, match the rest of downtown. It says this building that burned down was built in the 1920s. All those buildings were built in the 1920s. Go down to Livermore, go down to Pleasanton. Their downtown is a downtown. They don't throw these big buildings up there. They don't. They keep it. They can build it a block away, 2 blocks away. Lincoln Landing is still 70% occupied. It's not full. They made this specific in this bonus plan when they needed it. They've built a ton of housing in Hayward. They're building on 2nd and C Streets, a massive 5-6-story building. That's only 2 blocks from here. On A and 2nd Street, they're building a massive 5-6-story building that might not get full. And it's 2 blocks from downtown. They're going to feed the downtown. This place is going to be right across from my business. Yes, 30 units there is going to add a little bit of business, maybe. But 29 parking spots, there's no parking down there. Let alone that shade. Let the sun in. That's what's happening. It's a beautiful downtown that would shade that corner all summer long. That entire street at that height would just be shaded. You go to a downtown, you want to walk around, you want to feel the sun, you want to be with your friends, you'll be looking for the sun. Because it's not that warm in Hayward all the time. And just because you can doesn't mean you have to. Build a 3-story unit, you can have parking for all 12 units or whatever you can squeeze in there and make it right for all of us. Don't sell yourself short. That's our downtown and it should be yours. But the way this is, it just feels like they're just doing it because they can. And if I was a developer with that kind of money, I'd try to do it too. Cool ass little, excuse my language, folks, but a cool place to park. I mean, really? Make it 3 stories. Make it 3 stories. Put a little commercial unit down there. That sounds nice. And I think it would be great. But not 6. And if you guys do this, I think you're just doing Hayward wrong, like they've been doing the whole time. And Anika, what you said, how do they approach us? When they did the Main Street project, this has nothing to do with planning, but it should be discussed. It should be talked about. And maybe these guys wouldn't have to draw these big plans. Right? They wouldn't have to draw them this big if everybody had some feedback. But I just want you to know how I feel. I'm getting ready to retire. I'm out. It's not about me. It's about what you're going to do to downtown Hayward. Think about Pleasanton. Think about Livermore. They're killing it. It's a downtown. Doesn't have to have a 6-story building in the heart of it. For what? For what? Because they got density I mean, it's just because you can, it doesn't mean you have to. And I'm going to end on that note. Thank you for your time, folks. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Michael Booker.
Hello. I'm a Hayward Unified School District school teacher, and I actually currently live in the units like across from the proposed 6-story building. I'm just curious about the affordability of the building personally, because even with like say the salary I get from the school district here, I'm barely getting by. I have an idea of like say the people that would move into the unit as well too, and I'm not sure if they would really contribute to this specific community in particular. I agree with Vic in terms of like say the height of it, like maybe not make it like 6 stories or however, maybe keep it at 3 stories. And I get with the whole housing crisis, but I want you to really consider, especially with all the units that you guys are building within Hayward, I want you to really consider about who the people that are going to be coming into this community are and how it's going to affect, like say a local boy like me who grew up in Hayward, Kelly Hill specifically in the Fairview district. I have a lot of friends and peers. We're not able to live here. We're just not. I got my master's at Cal State Hayward, not East Bay, Hayward. I mean, you guys don't even know what I mean. It's just a little bit frustrating. Yeah. And even with the parking situation, I know Vic didn't mention this. There's a dirt lot behind my building. That should be parking. There shouldn't be, I shouldn't have to change my tires every like couple months because of like the glass and the drugs. And even the shootings that go by, like say specifically within a lot as well too there. I'm kind of tired of like calling 911 personally, but just in regards of like say some of the issues that go on in downtown Hayward, but I don't know. I just think there could be like say other things that could be built there as well too that could like say help out the community in particular. But that's all I have to say, but thank you guys.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other speakers online?
We have Frank Goulet online, Chair.
Go ahead, speaker.
Oh, you're trying to be, hello? Can you see me?
Yes, go ahead.
Now you can hear me now?
We hear you.
Oh, okay. I lived in, moved into Hayward, 1856. I was, a young guy. I was 6 years old when I came. And I've spent a long time with the city. I've lived here forever, my life. And I'm one of I try to do things about, I do walking tours about happens in Hayward. Since I had my stroke, it's made it hard for me. So excuse me that don't speak very well. I'm working on it. this property was built or bought by William Hayward, 1852 year. And that building was put down then at 1852. That's when it was built, not 23, not 1930s. No, 1852. That was the place we had the general store. It's a big. He had a basement, and then he built another hall up on top, and that continued to be on the same property. So I don't want you to think about 1852. William Hayward built that the block from Castro. It cost him $100 for the whole block. And then he built another hotel that was 150 units, another place on the downtown. He was the main that made it be the Hayward. That's what made it happen. It made it happen. I think there should be some kind of a mural or some kind of other kinds of nice things talking about William Hayward should be available here. Now, I'm not gonna, I don't have much time, so I'm not gonna talk about things. And maybe I'll be able to talk again with city councils. I hope City Hope will bring this up again, and I'll follow Mark Stina to help me do that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other people online who would like to give a public comment?
No, Chair.
Thank you. And seeing no one else in the audience who wants to give public comment, I'm going to close public comment at this time, and I'm going to move on to commissioner comments. Do I have any commissioners who would like to make any comments? Commissioner Stevens?
Thank you, Chair. So first off, I really love the building architecture. I think the use of the brick veneer, I think is a really, really nice treatment. And I think the way you've designed the building, I think it really breaks the height. So I'm a super big fan of it. I really appreciate with what you did with the driveway access. And I think it's great that you actually provided some parking. I think a lot of what we heard tonight, and I'm sorry to say this, but essentially we wasted, almost 2 hours talking about something that we have no impact on. This quote housing challenge in trying to solve the housing challenge, we've kind of traded all our local land use issues. And as I've said before, somebody's got to write state politicians and get rid of them because, these things like SB 330 and everything else have just destroyed our ability to mandate anything. I'd also encourage the city council to look at the downtown specific plan, because I would bet that the commercial use in the first floor of this building is pointless. There's no economic benefit for it. I think there should be more flexible approaches used for ground floor, because I think the idea of retail is almost laughable when you look at the amount of vacant space that we see in downtown today. I think that I think it's nice to say that, a developer or some applicant should maybe do what's quote right for the community. I don't know what quote right for the community is, because, we establish rules and we're supposed to follow those rules. In the old days, we would have done a shadow study and we would have been able to demonstrate kind of what the impacts of this building are, but we don't require that anymore. So the one thing I'm also going to say is I really appreciate the striking of condition of approval number 11. This is absolutely ridiculous that the city's mandating that a local private developer what labor relations a local private developer does. And I really hope that the city attorney manages this process before the city gets sued for it. I also did like what Mr. Goulart said about the history of downtown Hayward and before it's erased by SB 330. I think implementing something of the historical character to tell the story of something, maybe in the mural, maybe something about William Hayward would be a really nice asset to have. With that said, I would be totally fine with making a motion to approve this this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Stevens. Any other commissioners have comments? Commissioner Myers?
Well, thank you to everybody who put all this together. I was sitting here trying to come up with.
Chair, sorry, through the chair, sorry to interrupt, Mr. Myers. Before there can be any more discussion, I think it'd be appropriate for the chair to ask if there's any seconds to allow additional discussion on the item.
Okay, I apologize. Is there a second? Is there a second on the motion? I'll second the motion. So go ahead, Commissioner Myers.
Thanks. Yeah, I wanted to speak before I talked about that. So I was sitting here trying to come up with a way that I could explain what my thoughts are inside. And I believe Commissioner Stevens hit most of those points exactly, eloquently, a lot better than I could have regarding SB 30, regarding the abilities that we do have on what we can and cannot approve, the frustrations that we have and the community has on top of that. And if people see the same frustrations, that they need to address it at the voter box. I also like what Commissioner Stevens said in regards to, what was it? Speaker Goulart. I like to keep the murals, maybe with the history of Hayward involved in that. I think that would be fabulous. So I just wanted to conclude my thoughts with that.
Any commissioner comments? Commissioner Patterson.
So I also want to just thank staff for your time always put into this and the presentation, and everyone who's online, and for all of our community who stayed and commented and is really engaged in this, and to everyone who's here, because to me this is a tough one. So I'm just going to say what I think about it. So I think it's great. I think that when you look at that lot, as we all know, it needs to be developed. So it's exciting on one hand, right? Because it's like, oh, good, something's going to happen on B and Main, and that's needed. That's wanted for the city. It's a mixed use development that does align with the downtown specific plan, which does mention mid-rise buildings, but it doesn't necessarily say where or that they all have to be that way. I feel like the inclusion of the very low income housing, and again, it's just my feeling, so I'm not saying this is what occurred, but it feels like it was just used to get the density bonus waivers. And so that does not feel genuine, that people are caring about this community or about very low income residents or any other residents. So my appeal is to the developers to consider making some changes based on what was heard tonight, because our hands are tied, but yours are not. And so those are my comments. Thank you.
Commissioner Franco Clausen.
Thank you. Yes, again, I want to echo thank you to the staff. I know it's very daunting putting this together, especially developer and everyone that's here tonight. I have to echo, we have been here for 2 hours talking about the same thing, but I'd be remiss not to listen to someone who's come and owns a business here. I'd be remiss not to listen to people that have taken time to come here tonight to explain how they feel about downtown. And I would be remiss not to say that Hayward is home to a lot of families living on top of each other. And when we talk about development, yeah, while it's exciting and we do need housing, but I will say it again, we need housing for people in Hayward. And that has been something that has really been the impetus of me joining this planning commission is to make sure that we think about equity. As we talk about it on every platform, it has to be in action. And equity, not just in having, which I agree, there should be some more affordable housing in the unit. Like I have to 100% agree with what you said. But we also have to have equity in the people that own businesses, as Hayward is struggling with keeping businesses open right now. And to my other commissioner's point is like, I don't know whose idea it was when we still have vacancies at other developments that we've already created, that would be a good use of that below, that bottom level floor of this building. And I too would like to see it to stay with the aesthetic of 3 floors so that you don't impact any of the other businesses. So I just wanted to add that because it's not easy to put a development together and it's not easy to come up with plans and go through the process with planning. But this is also Hayward, and to what people have said tonight, they want it to feel and look like and serve the people of Hayward.
Any other commissioner comments?
Yes, I had some comments.
Go ahead.
I wanted to just thank the staff for their report and also thank everyone else that has come and voiced their opinions and their feelings about the project and the future of downtown. I also want to, making my decision tonight, be cognizant of the developer and the applicant's efforts to bring this and get early feedback from the Council Economic Development Committee. So I think that was an important step in sort of teeing this up and setting it up to come before the Planning Commission, knowing that they have sort of gone to them and made their case and presented their ideas and application, and we're open to that. I think that was an important part of me considering this application tonight. Is it a perfect project? No. There are other similar level buildings in the downtown area that we can look to, so that this one, even though it's in the downtown core, there are others at Maple Lane, and then there's the one that we approved earlier this month over on D and Watkins. And so I think that the current lot is an eyesore, and I look forward to some more vitality in the downtown by some of these residents moving in. And so I'm prepared to support this project this evening.
Thank you. So my comments are that I think that the project is, it feels a little bit like we're trying to stuff a sausage, in my opinion. It's a lot going on in a very small space that we're trying to do. And so I understand the concerns of the neighbors for sure. And as somebody who does like to go and sit outside on B Street in the summertime, I also would prefer to have the sun coming in as well. But I also agree with Commissioner Stevens that from what I read and what I know about SB 330, I don't think we have a choice. And I think if we comply with the law, which we have to do, I don't think that we can reject this project if we are following the state law. I agree with Commissioner Stevens that unfortunately the state law has taken away a lot of choices from local government. And although I understand the need for the RHNA numbers for sure, because of the housing crisis, I also understand that as a planning commissioner, I really understand that we need some more autonomy at the local level, and we need to be able to say this doesn't work for our community this time. Unfortunately, that's not where we are at. We are at a place where we are bound by state law. And I do believe that the state law mandates that we have to approve the project for all the reasons stated earlier. So I am very excited about the look of it. I think it is a lovely project. I also agree that it's little too tall for my taste for the downtown area. I'm appreciative that they did put parking, give their residents parking, and as well as I do appreciate the fact that they went to very low income as opposed to just moderate or low income. I think we definitely needed that. But as far as what I read, it looks to me like we do not have any choices. So I will be supporting this project. And are there any other commissioner comments about this project? Hearing none, there's been a motion and a second. Would you please take a vote?
For the record, per staff's recommendation, this includes removal of condition of approval number 11, correct?
That is correct.
Commissioner Stevens,
Yes.
Commissioner Goodbody,
Yes.
Commissioner Franco Clausen,
Yes.
Commissioner Patterson,
Aye.
Commissioner Myers,
Yes.
Chair Lowe.
Yes. And the project passes. It was 6-0, and it's a tough project. It's a tough one. This was a tough one. This was not an easy decision by any standpoint. All right, let's move on to approval of the minutes. We have approval of the minutes, starting with the meeting. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Commissioners, thank you. We understand this is tough. I'm in the position of getting to do this in a variety of places, and I think these are common issues we all share as Californians. And I think we all have mixed bags. I just want to leave with a closing note. I love the idea of, I don't know how much we can influence the art. That's for the artists, but if we can guide this towards illustration of history and in other ways capture some of the legacy, I love this idea. So I think we'll be pushing in that direction. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. All right, so we're going to go to the minutes of the Planning Commission meeting on December 7th, 2023. Do I have a motion?
I motion.
All right.
Second.
And is there any discussion about it? Hearing none, may we please have a vote? Roll call vote.
Commissioner Stevens,
Yes.
Commissioner Goodbody,
Yes.
Commissioner Franco Clausen,
Yes.
Commissioner Patterson,
Aye.
Commissioner Myers,
Abstain.
Chair Lowe.
Aye. All right, we're going to move on to Planning Commission meeting, approval of minutes for December 14th, 2023. Do I have a motion?
I'll motion.
I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner Stevens. And may we please have a roll call vote? Oh, sorry.
Point of discussion.
Go ahead.
Question for staff on this one. So I was late to this meeting, which is noted at the top of this, but then it also says I was absent. So is that actually how it should be noted, or is that an error? I just wasn't really sure. It says both things. It's on the first page of this one.
Commissioner Patterson will review and correct that.
Thank you.
So then I think the appropriate thing to do would be to table this to the next meeting.
Chair, you could go ahead and approve as amended by Commissioner Patterson.
Okay. And do you accept that?
I'll accept that friendly amendment.
Okay. May we please have a roll call vote?
Commissioner Stevens,
Yes.
Commissioner Goodbody,
Yes.
Commissioner Franco Clausen,
Yes.
Commissioner Patterson,
Aye.
Commissioner Myers,
Yes.
Chair Lowe.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. So both of the minutes have passed. Commission reports.
All right. Thank you and good evening, commissioners. Just wanted to give everyone an update. We have 2 items for the next regularly scheduled Planning Commission meeting on February 22nd. The first item is going to be a project that was previously approved by the Planning Commission and City Council. It was a rezoning and density bonus application The applicant is now wanting to put a tentative map on it to allow them to be able to sell the units. So that will be coming before the commission. And there's also our annual general plan implementation progress report, which we are required by state law to provide annually. And that will give the commission an opportunity to see all the work that our staff throughout the city have been doing to be able to implement the programs of the general plan. We will then follow, and that will end up getting forwarded to council and then eventually get filed with the state by the deadline in April. So just want to let you know that there's 2 items on the February 22nd calendar. Also wanted to let the commissioners know, I know that several of you expressed interest to me. The council is having a work session, a special work session this Saturday, starting at 9 o'clock here in the council chambers. And they're going to be discussing the strategic roadmap. So for those that are interested in what the council is considering for the next couple of years related to updated projects and priorities, that would be an opportunity to listen in and be a part of that conversation. I think the meeting will be, like I said, here in the council chambers starting at 9 o'clock on Saturday, but you also have the opportunity to participate. I think, is it Zoom?
Thank you for the clarification. It's in room 2A.
Oh, room
It's in
2A.
room
Thank you.
2A.
Thank you. I
And
stand
they-
corrected. Room
And
2A.
they will
2A.
be able to participate via Zoom as well.
Okay, wonderful. And that's it for my report outs this week. Thank you.
Thank you. Do any other commissioners have any announcements? Referrals?
Can I just make a statement?
Commissioner Franco Clausen.
So I don't have any comments. I will say when we have meetings like this, when it's really tough, and I know that our hands are really tied. I think that's why I said it's very important that we do outreach and hear from communities so that you guys can really assess it when you're going through these projects. Because there's nothing worse than people come here that feel like they've been gaslighted or voiceless when it comes to this process. And so it's statement to say is that we've got to be very mindful of that when we're going through these processes to make sure that community voice is included, because so many people talk about the history and adding all this, but people also make up the history and they make up the fabric of Hayward, and they should really, really be really considered when we do these processes.
Thank you. Anyone else? Go ahead, Commissioner Mike.
I think this is an appropriate venue to say this, totally off subject, but I believe in keeping our streets clean. And the city has implemented every 2 months you can sign up for a free certificate to take a whole truckload of stuff to the dump here in Hayward. It's a really great and easy process. I do it in our neighborhood every 2 months. It's one of the services I provide. And I just encourage everybody to go on, Google it and sign up. They sell out really fast, but it's a great, great system and a great service. So take advantage of it.
Thank you. Any other commissioner comments or questions? Commissioner Patterson.
Also, just a comment on the difficulty of tonight's meeting. I just want to note that I don't think that 2-hour conversation was a waste of time. So I know that our hands were tied, but I think that was an important conversation just for us to have and for the community to hear. So I just wanted to note that because I don't want us to leave here feeling like that was a waste at all. So thank you again, everyone.
Thank you, Commissioner Patterson. Anyone else have any comments? All right. So at 9:04, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.